Welcome to the Arbutus software tutorial series. This tutorial deals with how to access mainframe data using the Arbutus mainframe server. When accessing mainframe data with Arbutus, it's no different than if we're accessing files from a Windows server. Essentially, you install the Arbutus server software on the operating system, so in this case on the mainframe machine, and you use TCP/IP to connect the client software called Analyzer with the server. The way you do this is through something called a profile. So under Server Profiles, I have a bunch of them listed here. I'll just choose one that's already been set up to connect to our mainframe. The server type is Z-Series, and the user ID and password happen to be my TSO ID. We connect to the mainframe operating system using TSO ID. The host name and the port also have to be specified, and again, this can be provided by the installer. Once the information has been set up in this client profile, you can also specify an input and output prefix to determine where the wizard will start to look for data files on the mainframe. That's the input prefix, and where you would write information on your mainframe. That's the output prefix. All of this information has to be supplied, but once you have this information supplied, then you can connect to the server. And as you can see here, I'm already connected. Some of the file types we'll take a look at if I just go in the wizard here, new table, and choose the spawn server. We can look at flat files or VSAM files. These are files that are native to the mainframe environment. I'll click the Browse button. You can also see something called a GDG. This is a generation data group. These are also native to the mainframe environment, but we can read those no problem. Little disks here, the little icons, have a V on them. Those are VSAM. If they don't have a V on them, those are just flat files. Those are just like, think of them as Windows files. So just to give you an example of how easy it is to read a VSAM file, I'll select one here called KSDS demo and just click on Done. When I click on the Done button, it takes me back to this screen. We'll go Next. And the next thing it does is it says, how are we going to define this? We're going to define it manually. Is it a print image file that we're going to define, or do I use an external definition? Most times, almost always in fact, when you have VSAM data, you're going to use an external definition or metadata, something called a COBOL copybook. So when I click on Next, one of the options we have available to read is indeed a COBOL copybook. So in this case, I'll click Next, and it presents me with a list of all of our COBOL copybooks. Again, this has been configured during the install phase of the server, and it allows us to point to what we call a PDS. So this is an area where we have all of the different copybooks set up. And if I use the speed search here, I can pull up KSDS demo. I just happen to have a copybook for this, and when I go Next, you can see now that there's some different options with regard to these copybooks. Without going into a whole lot of detail, I can just say that you can either read one copybook at a time, or you can go back and read multiple copybooks. In this case, I'm going to just use the one copybook. This is just a warning mentioning the fact that if we encounter fields that have the word date in them, that these fields will be brought in as character data, and you might want to go back in using edit table layout to define them as date time fields. COBOL doesn't have a date time field type, but Analyzer does, and you can do some things, as you know, with date time fields that you cannot do with character based data, things like aging or do statistics, what have you. So this is just a little warning that it encountered a field with the word date in it that you may want to change. When we click on Next and then Finish, we'll see here that the data is now showing up in our view just like as if it were a regular Windows file. The familiarity is all there. Nothing fancy about this. The amount field looks like one of our records has a bit longer, so we just make that a bit longer so it doesn't show up as pound signs. And at the bottom here in the status line, you can see that the data file is located at arbcs1.prd.fil.ksdsdemo. We're reading that file off of the mainframe using a profile called spawned. Something else to note, a different data type, for instance, if we wanted to bring it in, we'd just go to the wizard, new table, I'll save my view, I'll choose spawned. This time I'll look at DB2. This is the database that's very common with mainframe environments. When I click on next, we have it set up again during the install phase. This is customizable. We have it set up to read multiple subsystems. I'm just going to read the first one on the list here, is DB9, and I'm going to read in all of the schema. For those folks who have used Analyzer already to read relational database tables, or use the Windows Server to read relational database tables, these screens will all be very familiar. It's the same screens. When we look at the customers table, if I were to click next, it'll bring in all of the fields and jump right to the very end. If I were to go back and choose Edit Query, just as a recap, this gives us more options when defining relational database data, things such as controlling which fields come in from the database, also controlling the where and order clause, so you can apply where clauses to filter the data, order clauses to return it in a certain order. And again, if you really knew SQL, you could check the little checkbox there and start doing SQL syntax to do things like left joins or union type selects, etc. I'm just going to bring in all of the data because, as you'll see, it's a very small table. The customers table just gets brought in from DB2 directly. As you can see, it's just a little sample database table provided by DB2, and we're reading this live. This information was not flattened. It wasn't brought down from the mainframe to the PC. You can tell it's live also because the visual cue here is this little purple left side on the table layout. The little link shows us that it's a server-based file, and the little purple on the left-hand side tells us that it's a live read table. So we're reading this information directly from DB2. If you wanted to create a flattened version of this, you could do an extract, and you could either keep the data on the mainframe, which is the default, and it would go to the output prefix area that we discussed regarding your server profile, or you could even extract the data to your local PC. So there's a couple of examples of mainframe data being read in from your desktop software. For more information regarding accessing mainframe data, contact your local sales representative, or you can contact sales@arbutussoftware.com.